There we go. All right. Hey, so been doing a lot of videos on Module Federation. They've mostly been just for myself, just yammering on into the screen. So we haven't really had any live stream stuff, but hopefully we'll have that soon with Dashboard. But today we'll actually have a little pair programming going on. So this is really exciting. One of the first times we've actually done some kind of paired exercise with another individual. And yeah, so everybody knows who I am. I'm Zach Jackson. I'm the creator of Module Federation. And we have a guest with us today. Sean, why don't you take it away and just introduce yourself?
Sean Vernon. I'm an associate front-end engineer at Lululemon, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more.
All right, so Sean, how much experience do you have with Module Federation, just so that everybody gets a feel for? Have you done it a couple times? Are you kind of new to the process? Like, where are you in this, so that we can help others understand what your level of experience in doing this comparatively to, say, some of them who might be coming in and being interested.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've sat down with you a couple times and gone over some like high-level overview. But as far as actually going into the code and working on it hands-on, basically no experience with that. So this
Cool.
is all going to be pretty new.
All right, so this is pretty much your first app that you're going to federate.
Yep.
Sweet. Okay, cool. So we're really going to take it from scratch here. So what I've done is I created a branch that stripped it out of two of the applications. I decided not to go too wild with it, just in case either of our time is limited. So we're going to just keep it simple, and we're going to go over two basic scenarios. So what we're going to end up having is really just two single apps, and what we're going to want is at one federated app, but we're going to do it against two different projects in here. And then we'll take it from there. If we want to look at anything more fancy or intricate, we'll just walk over it and take a tour of it. Does that sound good? So we're in the root of the app. Let's go ahead and just CD
Hmm.
into our first really simple one, which is basic host remote.
Okay.
And let's just go yarn start and see if they kick off. All right, there we go. And it looks like we have no problems. So now go over to your browser, and we're just going to go to localhost 3001. And then in a new tab, let's go to localhost 3002, just so you can see the two different apps that we actually have. All right, there's the beauty, which
Okay.
is pretty.
Nice.
And then let's go to here and 3002. Okay, so really stock standard. Like I said, this is just the most basic example, easy to get familiar with. And you'll notice obviously 3001 is just some text, 3002 has a button on it. And so in this exercise, what we kind of want is we want to get that button onto 3001. And we want all the other perks of Module Federation. So let's go ahead and just dive right into the code. So go over to basic host remote.
Okay.
And so the first thing, let's start with app one. All right, and
Okay.
what we'll want is, let's just go look at the Webpack config of it. Okay, so the first big thing that we're missing here is we don't have the Module Federation plugin. So
Hmm.
off the top of your head, do you know how to go and import it, or should we just walk through getting it?
Let's walk through getting it.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so then just over
Yep.
there and go const, and what we're going to do is import Webpack pretty much,
Okay.
and just leave it blank for right now. So make it curly braces, because we're going to actually destructure something, and then equals
Okay.
Webpack dot container. So we're going to go and require Webpack.
Oh.
Yep, and then yep, Webpack, and then we're just going to put dot container after the require statement. Yeah, cool. So that puts
Okay.
us into the container section of the Webpack object. So then in that D structure, go ahead and put in Module Federation plugin. Should start with a capital M. All Webpack plugins are always capital M. Yep, Federation plugin. All right, so that should have you up and running. From that perspective, in
Okay.
terms of just importing it. Yep, it looks good to me. Okay, so now what we want to do is let's go down to the actual plugins array there, and you'll see all we have is the HTML plugin.
Yep.
Yep, so right above that, we're going to add a new one, and it's just going to be, new module federation plugin. There you go. And then we're going to give it some braces. Cool. So then in there, what we've got is an option setup. And then for module federation, what we really want is we need to give it a name so that we can understand what the namespace is of the applications that we're actually using. So
Hmm.
for this, what we want to do is let's just call it app1. So start with a key of name, and it's going to have a string of app1. And then we're going to have a couple other things on there. So let's go and create a library. Yep. And it's going to be an object. And it's going to contain two keys. One of them is type, which is just var. I always use var.
Okay.
Then it's a
Got
little
it.
redundant, but you also have a name on here as another key, and that's always the name
Okay.
that you give Module Federation plugin. So just app1. Perfect.
Okay.
And then the next object that we want is we're going to want to add the remotes to it. So go on down and create another key called remotes on there.
Okay.
And the remote that we want is pretty much, so we have app1, and you see in the folder there we have another thing called app2. So it's a pretty safe assumption
Right.
that we're going to want to have app2. So what I like to do is create an object with the key and value of app2.
Okay. Oh.
And then as a string, there you go, app2. So the reason that I
Okay.
use the key value pair is because right now you could make it an array, but
Mm-hmm.
I like to display this because if you say are doing something in, say, a server-side environment, you wouldn't have the value of app2 be app2, but it could be ../../ app2 slash dist slash remote entry.js. And that's how Node would be able to coordinate and consume between each other. And in
I
future
see.
versions of this, in like beta 18 or beta 19, that will actually be able to be a URL or even a string that's a promise that allows you to go out, perform a promise, and then return the result. So that's kind of why I
Hmm.
show it off, the fact that it exists, because it'll do a lot more in the near future. So that
I see.
handles remotes for us. And just make sure you got a
Okay.
comma over there between remotes and library. I don't want us to have a yep. Okay, cool. And so then after remotes, we're going to want to add one more object key.
Okay.
And this is going to be the shared property because we want to now share something between the apps. So
Okay.
what we'll do in this example is let's just create an array, and what's the most obvious things that we can't have two of? What's the biggest things that we would want to share in a React app? Just think about it for a moment. We don't want dev dependencies or anything like that, but like in React, you can't have two of what?
Um, would it be two of the same React uh,
Exactly.
versions?
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. So inside a
Okay.
shared, the big thing we want to do is just put React in a string, and then we comma
Okay.
separate that, and we probably want React DOM, because I can imagine that the rules around React and React DOM are the same.
Got it.
Perfect.
Okay.
So to recap, what we have here is we gave this micro front end a name. We said what
Mm-hmm.
type it is. Its type is var, and the library
Mm-hmm.
for it, the library name is app1 as well. We expect to
Mm-hmm.
consume a remote that's going to be called app2, and that remote doesn't necessarily exist right now because we've only done the first half of this. Then we've got our shared section where we just want to say don't download two copies of React DOM. You could have Redux in there or maybe Moment.js because they're really big, and so on and so forth. But just for the basic demo, we're just going to make it work.
Got it.
So
Okay.
now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to app 2 and pretty much just do the same thing that you did here. So if you want to copy the configuration of the plugin, then go ahead and copy it, and it saves everybody a little bit of time.
Okay.
And go over to app 2, and let's go into the Webpack config. And there we go. We're just going to paste it in there. And then
have to do the import.
Yep, and we want to go and require it again.
Okay.
And what is it that we need to change? So we copied it over, and now just logically speaking, what needs to change?
So obviously we need to change the app from app 1 to app 2.
Yep.
Both of these. And then the remotes is going to be different, right? It's going to be app 1.
So yeah, let's take into consideration this example. So in this example, we have a basic host remote. And so what this example is going to do for us is it is just going to, app 1 just wants the button of app 2. So there is no remote that app 2 would be consuming. However, what do we actually need in between there? So you're very new to the terminology, so I won't expect you to know the key, but all right, I have module federation set up in 2 places now, but how does that help me get button onto the page? What's the missing piece that app 2 needs to actually allow app 1 to say consume pieces from it? It needs to something the button. It needs to make the button available somehow so that it's consumable. So what we want to do is we want to use expose. So instead of remotes in this one, we're going to put exposes.
I see.
And then instead of app 2, we're going to now, let's go look in source and let's see where the button is in this app 2 folder. And there's our button. So what we want
I see.
So now what we want to do is put in the path for that. So it would be probably /src/button with a capital B. There we are. And so now what do we want to give the key of it as? Because we don't want to expose as app 2 as button. We might want more things on there. So what will we call it?
Button.
Perfect.
Okay.
And there we go. But now there's a caveat in here. We are compliant with Node 14's ESM structure. So you can't just put the word button and hope it'll work. So what you want to do is put that into a string, and we need to prefix it with something. And now put /button in front of within the string. So it's not button, but it's there we go. And so the reason we do this is because this is how things will work inside of ES modules in the future, which Webpack will start supporting in the near future, especially for Node.js. So in this scenario, where we want to make sure our format matches. And under the hood, Webpack's going to do some fancy magic to the / and all of that, but this allows us to know that this is the path at which where the system would start. And it's very handy if you had, say, 2 different buttons and you wanted to get promo button, which is also button, and some other button, but sometimes you can kind of just run out of names on what you can call the top key. So, you know, /button works really well here, but if we had promo button, you could go /promo/button, and you could connect it to wherever else that is. And now you have path matching that you can do on either side of your app.
I see.
So that's kind of why it exists like that. All right, so now
got it.
Let's try running the app, which will not work. But go ahead and restart your build, and let's get your console open in the browser, and let's see what it's going to complain about.
Okay.
Cool. So then let's spin her up and see if it plays nicer now.
There it is.
All right. So right off the bat, we have a successful build. Does that mean we're going to have a successful runtime? We're going to find out. All right. Didn't like that. So let's go and look at the console and see what the error is. All right, so this is a new beta 17 issue. And this really is shared modules not available for eager consumption. So without getting us too deep into the woods, you'll see this error happen when you're sharing something that's immediately executed by the host application. Now, this was fine in beta 16 because the host was the only thing that could actually drive who gets what and who is sharing what. The remote had no choice in it other than if you don't have it, I'll get my own. But in beta 17, we've created a system known as omnidirectional hosts. And unfortunately, that requires us to do
Okay.
one extra step to actually get the thing wired up. So let's go into app 1, and there's various ways that this can be done, but I'm just going to show you the way that I do it, just because it's quick, easy, and it's actually the most performant. So let's go into
Okay.
source of app 1,
Okay.
and you'll see I have that bootstrap file there, which I just left there for our own
Mm-hmm.
convenience. So let's open that and look at it.
Okay.
All right, so that's
Okay.
actually what starts our app. And we'll see that I have this index.js file over here, which is the entry point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's open index.js. Okay,
Okay.
so you'll see I have, import bootstrap from bootstrap and blah, blah, blah. Now, there's a couple ways that you can get around the eager exports issue, but we'll go
Mm-hmm.
over those after we get these two demos up. Then we'll expand the horizon of what's possible. So to get
Okay.
us off the ground, let's just change that to a dynamic import. So just dynamically import bootstrap. And you don't need to import
Okay.
from or anything, just straight dynamic import bootstrap.
Okay.
You can kill all of that as well.
Okay.
And just, import parentheses string dot slash bootstrap dot js. Like any lazy import.
Wait, I
So,
don't think I've done that before.
all right, so delete that.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
then now let's put curly round braces around it.
Okay.
And get rid of the space in between them so that it's together. Yep. And then dot
Oh.
slash,
Okay.
or in strings dot slash, sorry. And then
Okay.
now go get your bootstrap.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's how, and that's pretty much code splitting. If you're not super familiar with it,
I see.
this is how we lazy import stuff, and that's a promise. So you could have them do this or whatever, but for our case, we actually don't need any of that. This async
Okay.
boundary operates as a special way for us to pretty much tell the rest of our application that's going to try and run eagerly that it will have a
Mm-hmm.
spot within the startup to wait. And now Webpack has the opportunity to say, okay, hold on, bootstrap.js. You're not just going to run as soon as I get to the page like it was doing before, but we have a
Mm-hmm.
boundary where we have a promise. So Webpack can now know it has a chance to stop the application, to coordinate with the rest of the system, and then determine how to continue, and then actually load your application. And now
I see.
all of that sounds slow and non-performant, but it takes, I think, 8 milliseconds. So, it's not actually a real issue. So let's just go ahead and
Got it.
refresh the page and let's see what happens.
Okay. I think I killed it, so
Yeah, no
start it
no
back
problem. And now let's see if we can bring app 1 back to life at least.
up. Okay.
Boom. All right.
There it is.
So if we got app 1 working, the chances are app 2 might need this, but before we go down it, let's just reload app 2 and see if it's having the same issues.
Okay.
Haha, and app 2 does not actually suffer from the same issues. So we're in the clear there, and that is either because, let's go look at the index.js inside of app 2.
Okay.
Yep. Haha, so I already actually did it.
There you go.
So that's why everything still keeps running. All right, so now we have
Got it.
this space where Webpack is allowed to do Webpack things without our application trying to eagerly do stuff soon as Webpack gets on the page. So now there's still two other areas that we want to cover. One is I still want the app 2's button available inside of app 1. So now I'm going to throw the question out
Right.
to you. Do you want us to do the importing of the button and see the error, or do you want us to preemptively stop the error that we will see when we try it and handle that first? Because there will be one more error that shows up, so we can either put the code in place, see it error, and then you'll know what it looks like, or we can preemptively go ahead and just do the last piece that we need before the system works nicely.
Let's go ahead and see the error.
All
And
right,
then we can
perfect.
kind of debug it.
So let's go into inside of app 1,
Okay.
and this is looking pretty bland, and it would be real nice if underneath
Hmm.
that H2 we had a button. So let's go
Mm.
ahead and use React Lazy. So
Okay.
just, underneath React, underneath the import of
Hmm.
React, just have a new line. And
Okay.
let's go const button equals react.lazy. And then put an arrow function in there. And then it's
Okay.
going to be a dynamic import.
Okay.
And round it. Yep. And then you're going to now go put quotes on it. And then where are we trying to get button from? So just common sense here. It's not, don't over engineer it in
Uh-huh.
your head, because everybody always over engineers it. What are we trying to import?
Okay.
Based on what we exposed and based on what we know about the names that we gave everybody, what would you think what do you think that string could contain?
So we're looking for dot slash button, right?
Technically, but how do we know if, but dot
Yeah.
slash button seems like it could just come from the file system. So
Right.
how do we know who we're getting dot slash button from?
Would it be in the Webpack config that we exposed, right?
Almost.
Because
So
yeah.
exposed is the one half of it. But what you want
Right.
to do is tell app1, I'm going to get button from app2. So go ahead and type that in.
Uh-huh. Okay. Oh, I see.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Slash, and what are you trying to get?
Uh-huh. Button,
There you
right?
go. So app2 slash and then button. Okay,
Hmm.
so now that we have that
And
done, let's just go ahead and look at port 3001 and see if it complained or didn't complain with just us merely importing it. Haha, we get a complaint. So we'll see this comes
okay.
in various forms, but more or less what it comes down to is whatever is not a function. It can't find what we want, or it can't do what we want.
Hmm.
Okay, so now that we've done all of these things, what could be a missing piece here? So I have app 1, and app 1 is a standalone system. It has no clue anything about app 2, other than I typed in the
Mm-hmm.
word app 2 colon app 2 in the
Right.
Webpack build. So all that is a string to a string. So seeing as these are two separate apps and they're deployed on other ends of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
what's missing that would let these two separate apps know what they're talking about, or even know what app 2 the word means? Because this build would have no
Mm-hmm.
idea that there's anything to do with port 3002. It's got no clue what URL or anything that this comes from. This is phantom mystery to it.
Right.
So
Would you
yeah, go
would
for
you
it.
need the path?
I would almost need the path, but if I put in the path, it would mean like I would be reliant on almost the monorepo structure. I want to use the public internet
Mm.
and assume that
Right.
these were publicly deployed. So I'll
Mm.
we'll skip to the actual thing and go into public folder there, and we are improving this, so
Okay.
don't worry about it. But go in
Yeah.
there and index HTML, and you know what? In that head section, I'm
Mm-hmm.
betting you that we probably want a script that actually connects the two worlds together. Because how is this
Ah,
host supposed to be aware of its remote?
true. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
there's two pieces that we want to point out. Firstly, what are we actually going to import? Like, there was no special name that we gave anything. There was no file that we wrote that would allow us to do it. So we've actually spotted a bit of a flaw in our setup. So before we can
Mm-hmm.
do this, go ahead and create a script. Script source localhost 3002. That's the remote that we want to get
Okay.
stuff from. HTTP. Yep. 3002. And okay, so there we go.
Okay.
And close off your script and like in the script tag, so it's a valid piece of HTML. All right.
Okay.
You probably need a closing script tag because we are not playing with React.
Uh, got it. Okay.
Okay, so we have our closing script tag here, and let's get, there we go. Yeah,
There it
that
is.
looks good. All right, so we've got this script tag in here, but still, localhost 3002 is a
Mm-hmm.
website. It's not a script. So we've obviously missed a
Mm-hmm.
step in this whole process, and that step was
Mm.
because we copy and pasted the whole mechanics from App One, and App One doesn't plan to ever be a remote. It's just a host. So let's go
Mm.
back into the Webpack config of App 2, and we're missing a
Okay.
critical part of it, file name. So inside of our Module Federation plugin, just at the top of it, on a new
Mm-hmm.
key, call it file name.
Okay. Okay.
And I like to use remote entry.js in string as a string. There you go. And now go back to your HTML file in the other one, and you
Okay.
can put localhost 3002 slash remote entry JS.
Okay.
So,
That's already getting rid of the error.
all right. So which one
It
was
looks like
it?
there's something wrong with. You know what I think it was? Is I had a capital L on lazy.
Haha. So always something to be careful about. Webpack errors can be obscure, and
Yeah.
capital L on React Lazy can throw us out. But you'll see we have now
Yep.
got the application restored to its previous state. And if we look at
Yep.
localhost 3002, is localhost 3002
Mm-hmm.
operational? If we give it a good reload,
Uh.
just confirm it. Perfect. So
Yep.
3002 has no issues. All right. So now what we want is inside of app 1, we're going to want to use suspense. And let's go ahead and just pull in this lazy button.
Okay.
So, react.suspense as a JSX tag ought to do it.
Okay. Oh, I see.
And then what we'll do is inside of there, just put your button as a JSX tag. And button
Okay.
probably takes some text, so we can put in there, hello, hey, whatever we want. And then
Okay.
let's go ahead and just to be safe, let's go and put a fallback prop on suspense. So then, yeah, fallback equals, and we can just put a piece of text there saying testing or loading.
Is it an arrow function or just the text?
Just text. It'll take either. All right.
Okay.
And now let's go back over and look at 3001. And there you go. There's the button from Map 2.
Nice. Okay.
So if we look at our
Very cool.
network here, we could just prove that we're not insane. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look around, you'll see button.js down there toward the bottom. And you'll notice it comes from port 3002. So now we have pulled in
Wow.
a button, but I also see that it's not taking the props that you sent it in. So what we could do
Right.
is just mess with it a little bit more. And let's just hop over into
Okay.
button.js of app 2.
Okay.
And let's see. So there it takes that. So why don't we pass it children? And then in here, we'll just put it as, as children. And then put the or operator.
Okay.
And then we can just say, what is it, app2 button as a string. That way, if it's not there, there's some default for poor app2 who's still needs to run. All right, and now let's reload the page and let's see if it'll accept. There you go. And now it's accepting
There it is.
properties from a different place to a different place. So overall, there's a couple moving parts that we always want to think about, but in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
once you paste a Webpack plugin in there, modify it to your needs,
Mm-hmm.
and then, make sure that you pull in the remote entry JS file, after those two
Mm-hmm.
errors that we had, it was pretty much smooth sailing to get something to run.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. This is so easy.
Exactly. That's the thing that
Uh,
we really designed it for ease. Like it's not fair for, company organizational growth to be tied to engineering, learning challenges where now we have to learn a whole new process from some separate system when, why can't
Right.
everything just be import? Just like we shouldn't even
Right.
notice that we're using something different beyond, a day of Webpack configs. So
Right. Right.
that's our basic one. You kind of have a feel for how it works. So if you're up for it,
Hmm.
we can apply this to a bidirectional host. So this is the one right below the
Okay.
folder where it's called bidirectional. And unlike this one,
Okay.
which you can only consume button from one direction, we're going to say,
Hmm.
cool, localhost 3001 is going to consume app two's button, and app 2 is going to consume app one's button. And this is something we call
Hmm.
bidirectional hosts. So I would say start with app
Okay.
one, and I'm just going to kind of sit here and help spectate if you get stuck, have any questions. But seeing as you got it running pretty much on your own, and you have a pattern that you know
Okay.
of, just give it a shot and let's see if you can lay the foundations to get app one up and running.
Sure. And for the sake of time, you just want me to copy paste
Oh,
some of this stuff?
for the sake of myself, I copy paste. Like,
Cool.
whenever I need something out of this thing, I just go and pull it from, one of my like 20 or 30 examples just because, I mean, heck, why not if it's there? I mean, if you have a Babel loader, how often do you write the Babel loader from scratch? Or how often do you search that other project that you had it in and just use it? Same principle I always
Right.
follow.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
So we've got that one configured. We can call it app one because this is also called app one, but let's have one quick call out here. This is going to
Hmm.
be a bidirectional host. So what's the missing piece that we want to add on here? There's going to be two pieces that we want.
So we want exposes too,
We
right?
want exposes, and we also want to give it a file name so that module federation actually emits a remote entry for the other side to consume.
Right. Okay.
And I always call it remote entry. Tobias likes to call it container JS or whatever. I just
Okay.
started with remote entry, so. And you don't need to do @1/. You can just call it just the plain old name, and it'll get
Okay.
emitted and served by port 3001 just under that, just like a chunk would or anything else.
Okay. And for file name, do you need the .js on there
I believe
then?
so.
For
I
this?
believe so.
You do.
We'll
Okay.
find out though. And
All
then
right.
for our
Okay.
exposes, let's say, okay, so for our exposes, typically what we would have to do is go and introspect and see what we're exposing. But seeing as we kind of
Hmm.
already know that this is built on top of our other one, we're going to try to expose
Hmm.
button on both. So it's a nice little shortcut. Just apply
Okay.
the same expose as you would for button.
And that was gosh, what am I forgetting? There it is. Okay. It's right, the /.
Yep, so you can just copy that over. And once you have just the boilerplate of the code there, you can really add anything you want. So,
Hmm.
after this little intro call or anything like that, you could pretty much build an entire app just from the bidirectional option or anything like that. The foundations never really change beyond what you're
Got it.
typing yourself here. And yeah,
Got
so
it.
we look good there.
Cool.
And then we want to see index HTML probably needs something as well. I always forget it.
Ah, okay. Do
That's
that.
in public.
Pub- There we go. And we need the script, right?
Yep. And so we want each port script. So one of the nice things is if you're at a company, it wouldn't be ports and stuff like that, but we could take advantage of, the luxury of like whoever.com/the team, like whoever.com/checkout, or any of the following team names. So it'll be a little easier to understand who comes from where. So we're back in it. So yeah, let's go ahead and get the remote entries in place because that's kind of the key crux to this is remote entry is really the interface. That's how we can create Webpack systems that can run on their own but talk to each other. So we want 3001, or well, we want 3002 on app one because they're trying to get from their other remote. So yep, that looks good. And then let's just go down to to app 2, and we're going to go into their index HTML, and we're going to give it 3001. Cool. So now both of them have the interface to talk to each other. Now this creates the bidirectionality possibility. So let's look at app 2's Webpack config and see, well, what we might need there. So we don't have anything, so that's a start. So let's, instead of scrolling up to our original one, seeing as we already fixed up bidirectional app 1, let's just use them as the reference point for moving forward. So let's look at their Webpack config. Let's see, we have app 1, we have the remote entry on there. We've got that, it's going to use app 2. And we already have our exposes written out. So yeah, it's more or less a copy-paste job, and we just change the names out. And yeah, just drop it there. And we can just, and we just drop it right there. And then, what are the things that we'd want to change? Perfect, and who's our remote? Perfect. So now if you kill this build, cd into bidirectional, / most likely, and we'll cross our thumbs and let's say, okay, yarn start, and let's see if it's a one-time start. Okay, so it looks like they're talking to each other. Let's go to port 3000 and, all right. Haha, so we have an eager consumption issue. And on 3001, let's check the console. All right, so we got the same eager consumption issue. So how do we fix it? Seeing as we fixed it once before, and the most reliable method, let's go ahead and fix our eager import. So you've got index.js there. And now what I would say is create a new file called bootstrap.js. Lowercase is always better, just so nobody confuses it with a React component or anything. And and then select all from index.js and just paste it into Bootstrap. And what that means is that there's no import React that can run without a promise. And now what we do is go back into index.js and just dynamically import the Bootstrap. Curly braces, we're going for a dynamic one. /bootstrap. All right. We'll probably see the error happen on the other side since these are bidirectional systems. So let's just go to app 2 and preemptively give it the same setup. And an alternative way around this could be, you could say promise all, import apps, import React DOM, and make them all dynamic imports, and then promise all then, and then you could go, React DOM render, and then pass app.default in, and it would achieve the same thing, because now we've held up the execution of your app correctly. So there's multiple ways to do it, but the bootstrap mechanism is just like the easiest in my opinion. All right, so now we have them both bootstrapping. So let's see if the apps come back to life. All right, so there's app 1. And there's app 2, but something seems off here. So we got the remotes connected, we have them booting on their own, but we still don't have app 2 button showing up. We've got them exposed, we have everything, but the only piece we're actually missing now is the actual implementation. So just like we did before, we want to go into app.js, and we might want to use suspense and go ahead and pull that thing in. You'll see I have local button right there. So right, either above or below. I would say put it below, just because it's that way they're in order. So right below react.suspense. And give it a fallback while we're in here. And the cool thing about this whole pattern is that fallback could be an NPM version. So if you had a stale copy of the pattern library or something laying around, just make the fallback that. So you still get to see an experience, it just might not be evergreen. It just increases redundancy. So now we have suspense set up. We want to go ahead and get our whole React lazy component put back in place. So, underneath React, we want const remote button equals react.lazy, and then we just perform the same thing. And we'll want to do this in app 1 and in app 2. And that'll create the interchange capability. And you want that to be a arrow function that returns. Yep. And the reason we do that is so that's not eager. Otherwise, Webpack sees that and immediately starts it with lazy. But lazy actually wants the opportunity to do its own thing beforehand. And make sure that's a promise as well. It always has to be wrapped in a dynamic import. So app1 / should be import : or parentheses app1. Yep. There you go. And make sure you give that other colon on the end there. Or the other closing quote. And there you go. So now app 1, and you still want to, what do you want off of app 1? app1 / there you go. And now what we should see appear is, yep, go on in there and put in remote button. And there you go. Now you have two systems getting things from each other. Now let's go back to, I think you're in app 2. Yes, you are. So now let's go back to app 1 and let's add that last mile piece to it. So hopefully you begin to see that this really, for all the scariness that it looks like, if you were given a boilerplate, kind of like Create React App, or even just, I have like 10 boilerplates right in here, the level of intimidation to actually do something is really, really small. And, that's the goal. That's what we're trying to achieve with this, is to say, how many times have you done dynamic importing? And you've never done the module federation. We've spoken about it a couple times, but this more or less is the first time that you're trying out several different technology types, and it kind of proves that you really don't need to have any kind of concern about your preconceptions of the challenges that are behind it. If you know how to use React, then that's pretty much the only thing you'd really have to know in the event that you're working with a React app. And now let's go over to port 3002 and let's look at Magic over there, or 3001, and give it a refresh just in case, and then we'll case the error and see what it could be. Haha. There we are. And okay, so now let's go to 3002, go to 3001, and there you go. So now, within the span of maybe 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20, I know we went into some explanation scenarios here, but within that short period of time, we've essentially federated we've federated 4 applications under 2 different circumstances. And we did so without, after attempt 1, it was a copy paste job for the rest of it. And, that's pretty awesome. So seeing as we've lost audio here, shake your mouse around if you think that it was really easy to do. There we are. And shake your mouse around again if you think that you would be, there we go, typing's even better. And would you feel comfortable trying this again at some point in the future, or making your own app off of this? And, what are your biggest concerns with doing this? Is there anything that worries you about it? Is there anything that you found, hard to do beyond just doing it for the first time? Excellent. Well, Sean, thanks a bunch for, hopping on to our little pair programming session. And yeah, you see, now you can kind of see, oh, right, well, this really isn't that big a deal to get things to talk in between. And, at work, you can start to think about, well, how could I apply this somewhere? If we needed the code to come from somewhere else, or we needed to be able to change it easily or update it easily. Um, we're just talking about React components, but imagine utilities, tools, analytics, anything. The only difference is those would not need React Lazy and Suspense, so they're even easier for us to actually do out in the real world. So yeah, hopefully this kind of got your feet wet into the technology, and you got a ton of examples to pull down and play with. And of course, reach out to me if you have any questions on them or want to see anything about them. But hopefully, you kind of get a feel for what you're looking at and how to find stuff within here. If you would be open to joining me at a later stage, what we could also do in another video is, let's say, take an app, or if you go nuts and you create your own little one or copy and paste one of these out, what we can do is either take one of my apps or take one of your apps, and we can attach it to the Module Federation dashboard. And that'll give you the ability to see what's going on, to see who uses what in an actual visual way. And eventually you'll be able to actually control who uses what, when, and where without ever restarting or redeploying your systems. So anyway, this has been fantastic. And there we go. All right, so next session, we'll definitely do some dashboard hookups. So we'll get in contact some point soon. Again, thank you for joining me in this little experiment. And, to the rest of the viewers, you can really see that, there's really no barrier to entry. And if you have a problem with it, the chances are, go to the GitHub organization, Module Federation, throw up an issue there, and, there's a team there to support and help. And it's ever growing, and the knowledge is becoming more and more common. So yes, and thank you, Sean. Thank you for joining. It'll be great to continue this conversation. So on that note, let's end it off. Sean, thank you as always for joining in and just being interested in this. And there we go.